Welcome back to another weekly analysis video. This analysis is for the week of November 2nd, 2025. We'll start our analysis off with a weekly review of last week's price action and then move on into the analysis for next week. So if you recall, I was looking for this area to be targeted. We had closed on Friday of last week here, roundabouts there. And we were looking for here. We're just looking for low-hanging fruit objectives since we are at all-time highs. And, you want to be careful in these uncharted territories. However, I did mention that we were still looking for 26,244 as our overall objective. And we did hit that last week, and we have come off of that since. So we're going to see how we behave in here, and as a little bit of insight into the future, we may want to target down and back into here and then resume the rally higher. But I'm watching to see what happens in here. But overall, we blasted through and actually gapped on the opening through our objective for the week and into 26,244. That's what transpired. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on into the hourly chart. Alright, on to our hourly chart here. We can see the open here at 1800 Sunday, October 26th, and you'll notice the gap up from where we closed here on Friday. We gapped through our next objective in here. It did not even close it in, it left it, which is very indicative of bullish behavior, and continued to rally strongly into 26,244, which again was the main objective that I had called for back in September, I believe. I had announced this level of what I was looking for. I don't recall when I had announced it, but nonetheless, I announced it, and now we're here at 26,244. Wick through it a little bit, and then came off of it going into Thursday's trading, and since then have not made an attempt to come back up into here. So it'll be interesting to see how we behave in here, and maybe going there next week, look to target this gap in here. So we'll look more into that as we move into the analysis for next week. But just to remind you all that it is nice to see that the bullish behavior did continue into our main objective of 26,244. Alright, moving into our 15-minute chart here, we see a more refined view. Look how big this gap is here. This is where I'd like to see price draw to, perhaps going into next week, but we'll talk more about that as we move into the weekly analysis. The gap up on the open, the rally into 26,244. That objective's been on my radar for a little bit of time now. Notice how it swept this level up and down, breaking down lower, coming back up into it again, and then now it's come off of it again into this area in here. So if we start really repricing lower, it will target this gap. But to recap for last week's price action, it's just nice to see that we maintain that bullish momentum into the objective we've been calling for some time now of 26,244. And by the way, I'm still bullish. So now we'll move on into the weekly analysis for next week, for the week of November 2nd, 2025. Alright, now we're back on our daily chart for the weekly analysis of November 2nd, 2025. I am still bullish. However, I do like the idea, and I do believe that price will come back into this area in here before resuming higher. Okay, the gap that I'm referring to, while I point to this area in here where these two blue lines are, the gap actually starts, per the rules of the inner circle trader, starts at the close of this candle and ends at the open of this candle. So between the close of this candle and the open of this candle is a gap where there is no price action being delivered on the upside and the downside. So I do believe we will come back into that before resuming higher. And let's say price doesn't come back into it and we just resume higher. Okay, now what does that tell us? That tells us that price is really bullish and that we could see some wild expansion. Okay, but I prefer it to come back into here, not closing in all the way, just come back into this area, and it can even come back into the open, but I prefer it not to. Come back into here and then resume the bullish trend. That's what I'd like to see. So that's what I'll be looking for going into next week, is I'll be looking for ideas and trades to confirm that idea that I'm looking for. Now, what invalidates that idea? Okay, we're going to have to dial into the lower time frames, and then I will discuss that. But overall, I'm still looking for higher prices, and I'm going to have to monitor going into the beginning of the week what we do, and we'll take it from there. Alright, dialing down into our hourly chart here. See a little bit more of a refined view. So going back to the invalidation idea of what I believe would invalidate the idea of it coming back down into here before resuming the bullish trend. And again, I'm going to preface this by saying, in an ideal world, if it were to be bullish still on a normal level, it would only need to come down into here and then rally away. It should not come back into this orange area in here. That's retracement that's a little too deep, and I don't want to see that. Now, interestingly enough, it can come back down in this area in here where these orange lines are. That's a stop run area relative to the 26,244 level. I don't believe that's necessary, but it could do that and still rally. So this is the closest area, and that's all price needs to do to come back down into here and then rally. But let's say it doesn't do that. What would be a sign that it's not going to do that and that it's just going to rally? It would need to get back above here, 26,244, with conviction, and then it would sustain the rally higher into new all-time highs. I want to see it come back down into here, however. That's what I'll be looking for in the next week. But that's what would invalidate the idea. Okay? So that's what I'll be looking for going into next week, is ideas going into here. I can't emphasize that enough. And the invalidation point would be convincingly large candles above 26,244 into new all-time highs. And lastly, into our 15-minute chart here, just really dialing down into the refinement on the lower time frames. And as you can see, drawing your attention to here, this just sticks out to me like a sore thumb, and that price wants to target that area before moving higher again. That's just how I see it. Again, it can move higher from here. It needs to blow through 26,244 and then proceed to make new all-time highs if it doesn't want to come back down into here. I would prefer it to come back down into here to resume the bullish trend and into new all-time highs. That's what I would prefer to see. And that, again, that's what I'll be looking for going into next week. What's interesting is, with everything that's transpired with this nice bullish run that we've had to 26,244 and a little bit beyond that, the U.S. government is still shut down, and it has not reopened yet as of this recording on Saturday night, November 1st. So again, with that thing looming over our head, it'll be interesting to see what happens now, because we're priced into a major premium in the Nasdaq and in most indexes. Do we see wild expansion from here? Because typically when you have very high prices like this, things can get a little crazy in both directions. So we're at a ceiling now. We're to a point in the United States where I believe things are starting to get a little bit icky as it relates to the economy and things of that nature. So it will be interesting to see what transpires in the future. For now, I'm still bullish on Nasdaq. I don't see a top yet put into Nasdaq. So when I do see that, I'll let you know when I'm jumping off my surfboard. Because again, I'm riding this wave higher until it kicks me off my surfboard. So that's the overall consensus for this week, is an initial movement lower, closing in some of this gap, and resumed bullishness. That's what I'll be looking for. So with that being said, that's going to conclude the weekly analysis for the week of November 2nd, 2025. As always, take care, and God bless.